welcome to the Monday morning edition of the Gary Sutton Show here on WSBA. I am Gary Sutton. And before I get the show started today, I want to give a shout out to a lady who has listened to our station for a long, long time and who has listened specifically to our show for a long, long time. And I'm talking about Pat Wiley. And Pat is an avid listener who is over at the Margaret Mao home. And I just want to say thank you to Pat for listening to our show. And I hope you have a great day today. So thanks so much for tuning in every day. And this show's dedicated to you, Pat. So Pat Wiley, a shout out today, an avid listener who's right over at the Margaret Mao home. And Pat, I know, is tuned in this morning. I hope she's having a great day, and I hope she enjoys the show, as I hope you do as well. We got a lot to do this morning. John LeBouttlier will be first up. And then Judge John Foradora, who's a president judge in Jefferson County and candidate for the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, will be here in the studio at 9:35 to talk about why he's running for Supreme Court and his qualifications and, what the Supreme Court does here in Pennsylvania, what he thinks about having an election for judges here, because we still do that here in Pennsylvania, obviously. And is that the right thing to do? Steve Klein, a workplace culture expert, stops by at 10:05 this morning on millennials and bosses disagree on work-life balance. And we're going to get into some of the different generations today, Generation X and Generation Y and the millennials and the traditionalists and the people like us, the baby boomers. Yeah. 4 classes of people kind of occupying the country right now, at least in this particular article. And then at 10:35, Joel Sears, president of the York County Taxpayers Council, stops by to talk about your money and what's on his mind when it comes to that today. At 11:05 to 12, it's your turn to make the call. Has social media made our society better or worse in terms of communication? I'll also tell you about how a naked final exam at the University of California, San Diego has sparked a mom's outrage. Who'd have thunk? Right? And we'll get into a little bit more about some of the sexting and social media stuff. There's some stories out there this morning that are pretty shocking, all here in the Gary Sutton Show. But first up, John LeBouttlier, tri-host of Political Insiders on the Fox News Channel, a former congressman, and always like clockwork here on a Monday morning as he walks the streets of good old New York. Good morning, John. How are you?
Good morning, Gary. Correct. I'm on 7th Avenue and 38th Street, and I'm on my high horse today.
You're on your high horse today. Well, take off, my friend.
Yeah, I'm on my high horse. I got a new theme to throw at you.
All right, go ahead.
There's Pat Caddell, and I've been talking about it really off the air, but and this could be the theme that a candidate could for the White House, we think.
Okay.
Which is, well, here's what it is. America is becoming or has become a corrupt country.
Wow.
Where we tolerate corruption. We don't even shrug at it anymore. Here's some examples. You got Tom Brady implicated in rigging the footballs.
Right.
People go, he would have won anyway, so who cares?
Right.
Hillary Clinton using the State Department as a cash machine for her and her husband's foundation. People go, so what else is new?
You got the State Department and ATM. Go ahead. That's good.
ATM, totally. Yeah. You got A-Rod repeatedly lying and taking steroids, still breaking Willie Mays' record the other day. No one really even shrugs anymore. It's cheating, lying. The leadership class is corrupt. The average American, I don't think, is corrupt, shakes his and her head and goes, maybe this is the way to go in this country. You got to be a crook to make it.
See, I'm going to add another. I love it. I mean, I love the narrative, and I believe that you're right on that. But I go a step further. See, I think the average American has become disillusioned and also a combination of disillusioned and lazy regarding that corruption. That's my thought. I think the average American.
I wouldn't say lazy because I don't like to dump, and I don't think you do either. You don't mean to criticize.
Well, I don't mean lazy. I don't mean lazy in the sense maybe disillusioned has led us to kind of a lethargic kind of feeling where we just don't really care anymore. I mean, it's like
no. I think I don't think it's that either. I think it's they're beaten down because there doesn't seem to be any justice.
Well, here's maybe let me take it a little further. You've raised a great thing this morning. Maybe they look at it and they say, the game's been rigged, that we don't know where the controls are to turn it on or off. Americans that,
and we can't get in on the rigging either.
There it is. And we're asked to be the
workhorse.
The workhorse, but also the innocent bystander. Sit back, we'll call you every 2, 4, or 6 years to vote, and then go back over there, sit down, and shut up. That's kind of what's been
I would say even more. We're the victim of this shenanigans because our wages don't go up to meet cost of living.
Right.
While these rich guys are swimming in the dough, and these rich guys are not just rich business people. They're government people, former presidents making $750,000 a speech. I mean, and it's in both parties. I'm not just dumping on. It's the top people are in it for themselves and couldn't care about the little people, and the majority of people are the little people. And I think that the corruption could be made into the main issue of the election.
I think you're right. Now the question is, and see, there's what's funny, is because I know you're going to disagree with the candidates who would fight that kind of thing, but you go to some of the candidates who would fight corruption. You say Ben Carson. There's a guy that is a non-political kind of candidate. There's a guy who doesn't seem to take necessarily a right or left horse on everything, but just speaks his mind. Now, sometimes speaks his mind to the point of saying, well, I'm a neophyte in this thing, and yet at the same time, isn't that what's exactly needed? That kind of thinking, whether it's Ben Carson or not, that kind of thinking that goes out there, or do you go out and get someone who is already... I don't know who else you talk about that. I just don't know. I'm at a loss.
Yeah, well, I mean, I go back to 2008, say, after 8 years of Bush, Iraq, phony intelligence to justify the war, Katrina, which is incompetence more than corruption, but a little bit of corruption because, Brownie, you're doing a great job. That was corrupt.
Oh, yeah.
So you're putting a lackey in there. So what did the country do? The country said, we got to have a change. We want somebody new. And somebody is not part of the mess. So they picked a black guy from Chicago who had no real federal or administrative experience.
And no chops.
No chops.
No.
And it turned out what we got with Obama was another political hack who's part of a corrupt Chicago machine. He just brought the corrupt Chicago machine to Washington. Same thing.
Yeah, larger level.
He hasn't changed it. It's more corrupt under Obama when you add it up and I mean the corruption of, sorry for these sirens, when you pass...
They must have heard you talking too much here, John. They're coming for you again.
Yeah, every time I talk to you,
they're coming for you.
They're monitoring us.
That's
Gary, the passing of how they passed Obamacare, those dirty deals in the Senate, that's not what the American people voted for Barack Obama for. They thought he was going to be better. There was hope with him. That he wasn't part of this mess. So when you say Ben Carson, right away I go, no.
I know.
I don't want these naive, well-intentioned guys that don't have a clue about how government works. I want someone who really knows how government works and is going to walk in there. He's in or she is incorruptible personally and is going to say, screw you. I'm here to fight for the American people, and I don't care what special interest I have to step on.
Now, see, I'm going to come back. I'm going to get on you a little bit here. That, to me, sounds naive, because I am a great believer right now that the status quo, represented by the people that are there, are not going to allow that to happen. I think this is how cynical I am. I think that they're going to do anything to keep that kind of person from coming in there, and I also think that that kind of person is going to eventually become swallowed up by the system. He will not change the system, or she will not change the system.
Well,
okay, so there, I'll pose that to you.
That's a great argument, but the key to this is if this hypothetical candidate with that stance gets elected, he's got the people with him.
Okay, all right, good point.
You're saying the special interest would keep him from getting there. I'm not sure they could stop this. They don't run the elections. So the great thing is the janitor's vote is the same as the CEO's vote.
Okay, so let me come back and counter with this. You really got me started this morning. You got me fired up. I appreciate it. So you come back and say, okay, so what have the politicians done? And Republicans and Democrats alike. Republicans by, the moderates and the status quo people and the Tea Party. On the other side, the Democrats with blacks and minorities and gays and illegal immigrants and all that kind of stuff. What have they done? They've splitted us up so badly that basically they know that we can't unify to elect that kind of candidate. What do you think?
I think we can unify.
But do you disagree that they've splitted us to that point where that's maybe one of the purposes is that you can't get a unified voice out there anymore because of that? Now, here's my question to you then. What would unify them? Where is that ceiling where those people are all going to come together and unify and say enough is enough?
Well, I mean, in 2008, they were unified enough to elect Obama. With Obama, it didn't turn out to be the change agent people wanted him to
be. Right. At least not change the way we thought it would be.
Yeah, exactly. Why couldn't it happen again where people are disgusted with the status quo of both parties and they elect someone from the outside who's not a naive guy, who is sharp enough to know how to go in there and fix things?
And I set you up so I could give this answer to that question that I knew you would ask. And it's this. Basically, that we have become a win-loss mentality in this country. I don't think, not everybody, but I think for the most part, we have become a win-loss where it used to be a win-win. In other words, I could argue my side, but eventually, there was a little bit of honor that played out. We said, okay, we've got to come up with something, though, here for the benefit of the American people. But now, I think we are in such a situation where it's win and lose that we take that side and everything comes through the prisms of those two sides, and I think that's one of the reasons that we cannot get there.
Well, it could be. I go back to 92. Now, 92, the country was not as unhappy as they are now, not as disillusioned. The economy was better than it is now. The world has gotten worse. Our world has gotten worse. And in 92... Bill Clinton's a Democrat, great candidate.
Right.
The incumbent, the first President Bush. And along comes an outsider, Thoreau, with no political party. He runs, and in June of 92, he's leading in the polls. He was ahead in the polls. Now, he then self-destructed, dropped out of the race, got back in the race, all that. But if in 92 an outsider could actually be leading, why 25 years later, when things were worse, why couldn't a better version of Thoreau win?
And I'll go back and say, because I just don't see that person breaking through. First of all, who the hell, like a Ross Perot right now, I don't know that there's anybody that is that selfless out there who wants to leave that gig and go into politics. I mean, why leave that gig when you can go control the politicians right now? You don't even have to step out there anymore. And let's come back. You've raised a great topic this morning. Hats off to you. I'd give you a hug if I was right there with you, so you're lucky. But anyway, I'll be right back with you, John. John LeBouttlier, tri-host of Blue Insiders of the Fox News Channel, former congressman, as we are in a fascinating discussion this morning. I hope you're enjoying it right here on News Radio 910 WSBA. Welcome back to the Gary Sutton Show on WSBA with John LeBouttlier, former congressman and political insiders, tri-host, and he has really stirred the beehive's nest up this morning, but it's great. It's a wonderful discussion, John. So I posed all that stuff to you before the break there. One of the things I was thinking about during the break was, the thing you've raised about the type of candidate that would step in that would be really a populist kind of candidate would have different values. But think about this. They'd have to play by the same rules of the status quo to get there, to get the bully pulpit that says, I'm going to be honest and run this country correctly.
I'm so happy you just used that last phrase, because that was during the commercial, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, what's my historical precedent?
Right.
The answer is Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Teddy Roosevelt, who was the king of the bully pulpit, was a clean guy from an aristocratic background in a rotten political system.
Exactly.
And he rose up here in New York, where I'm sitting, and then obviously became vice president and then president, and was incorruptible. And the people knew it because he was an aristocrat, so they knew he wasn't in there to rip people off. And he took on the whole damn system, and he turned a lot. I mean, a lot of things that we take for granted today began with Teddy Roosevelt.
But what's funny is,
all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right. But then when he tries to run a second time on an independent party, he doesn't win.
Well, actually, that's true, but it's not totally true. He made a mistake. He got to be president because President McKinley was assassinated.
Yes.
So then he runs on his own and gets elected to a full term.
He did.
And that night, he says, I'm not going to run again, which made him a lame duck, even though they had no restriction then. He could have kept running, but he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So he finishes that term, goes to Africa, stays away from politics, comes back, says, I want to be president again, tries to run as a Republican.
Right.
And that's where you're right, where the special interests, the powers that be now say, hey, we can't let this guy back in charge again. We knew what he did when he was in there.
Exactly.
We're not going to let him in. So they don't let him in. And then he runs Bull Moose, third party, and splits the vote with half the incumbent Republican president.
Exactly.
That's why Woodrow Wilson got elected.
Yeah.
But he did get there the first time. He did get to be president, and he did take on the status quo and the special interests, and he won. He beat them.
Yeah.
He got things done.
But my point was...
He busted the trust.
Yep.
So I think it's doable. I really do.
It could be. I mean, you could be right. I'm reading an article this morning by Josh Koshar from New Jersey it says Huckabee's message was in Real Clear Politics this morning, first line. Huckabee's message is as formidable as Bush's money. You look at a guy like Mike Huckabee. Has a religious background, pretty hard to the right when it comes to that. But a very, likability is one of the things you have to have, it seems to me, to still be elected president. It should not be the main thing. It shouldn't be the only thing, but it certainly is part of the mosaic of the whole thing. Could a guy like Mike Huckabee make some noise here? Could a guy like Mike Huckabee step in there? I mean, he's been with you guys there on Fox for a number of years, and he's made his bones there since being governor of Arkansas. What do you think?
Well, I watched his announcement last week. Here's what I would say. Of all the Republicans that are running on pure candidate skills, giving a speech, being pleasant, he's the best one. His message, however, is a little bit wrong, because he's too into the religious right, because he's got to win Iowa, and that's where he thinks he can win. But he's taken on issues, Gary, that are not going to win you a general election. Right. I mean, to oppose gay marriage, that horse is out of the barn.
Yeah.
And I think where the Republicans need to be, and I've said this to you on a lot of Mondays, is they need to be conservative on fiscal and defense matters. Absolutely, that's our bedrock. And we can be that way and win. But we have to be more libertarian on social issues. The country's changing. They want legalized or decriminalized pot. I don't like it, but they want it, so I go along with it. And they want gay marriage. You and I probably don't like it, but so what? How does it really... Is it costing me a night's sleep of two guys who love each other?
I am one of those. I am more of a live and let live kind of guy myself. I mean, I have some people to get mad at me over that, but I really am. Now, I understand, though, what the message is there. I think it gets into semantics, but I also think it gets into a whole lot of other things we can't discuss right now. We're almost done. But, hey, listen, great subject this morning. I really appreciate that. I mean, I love the back and forth, and I love the spurring of thinking. And by the way, I'll put you on the spot very quickly before you go. Who is the person out there right now, or have they yet to be named?
They've yet to be named, but I believe they're in the bullpen loosening up.
Okay. And with that in mind, we will maybe try to find their names here in coming weeks. John, I look forward to next Monday morning with you. Have a great week. And thanks so much for just spurring a great discussion today. Really appreciate it.
I had fun, Gary. Talk to you next week.
Take care, my friend. Thanks so much. John LeBouttlier, former congressman, tri-host of Political Insiders on the Fox News channel. You can see him at 7:30 every Sunday night with Packendale and Doug Schoen.